Hey, Composite Gloves here, and this is a video on Time DnB drum and bass. I know this is sort of in the middle, but someone commented about this, and I don't have school this week, so and my job is tutoring, which means I'm sort of out of a job right now too, so I have quite a bit of extra time on my hands. So I decided to go ahead and write a track, and I got really into it. So let me play you the track. In this video, I'm going to explain all the techniques and things that sort of went into it, sort of a rundown of a bunch of ideas that you could use to achieve similar results. Now, I did not mix this down or nothing. Like you can see, there's a couple faders that have been moved a little bit, but for the most part, everything is just really loud. So be prepared. This is also my first time hearing it over headphones, and I am relatively satisfied with where it's at. I may make some creative decisions later on to just make it more interesting. I got a little carried away working on this. It is called The Fat Man. So here it is. Oh, let me get a little bit closer here. So yeah.
Nothing's more important to the fat man than eating. Nothing's more important to the fat man than eating. Nothing's more important to the fat man than eating. Nothing's more important Fat man eating.
So yeah, that is the Fat Man. So there's some things I could still change, a number of things. I literally just sort of finished it, and it sounds really. I hear way more sub in my headphones than I do as part of the way my speakers are set up. So I kind of knew that I was going to expect that a little bit. So yeah, so some reference mixes could really benefit from this, because this lead right here sounds way larger over monitors in a room than it does over headphones. So I need to be aware of that when I mix this. But for the most part, it is there, and I enjoy it. It is quite interesting. It's one of the, I normally don't do tempo changes, but the track I was given as an example is called Extinction, and it's by, I believe it's something with a tech. And then the other one starts with an A, and I forgot what it's called, but I know the track's called Extinction, and it's a really interesting deal because he's sort of got this big, it's all about atmosphere at the beginning and stuff. So at the beginning, I have now methods I use to make this. So I pulled most of the tricks I have out because this halftime stuff's really tricky because the amount of space it invites, but I still wanted these cool moments of silence. So if we listen to it, I really tried to utilize, like right here, like silence. So you can hear I totally try to do that, and it'll sound pretty dope when things have been mixed properly, because I also noticed that the kick sort of gets consumed by the bass. And I did do some side chaining, but there were some basses that really suffered from the side chaining. So I'm probably going to end up doing some different methods for the mix down. I'm not going to show the mix down for this. This is going to be like a little track I do on my own, like separately from this. So, but it's just an interesting deal. I just want to show you some of the compositional aspects of this. So one thing is they invite this big space. It's all about atmosphere. And so when you want to get atmosphere, you just get weird. That's like the secret to atmosphere. You just start getting weird. So at the beginning here, I knew I wanted some sort of a atmospheric beginning, and I actually wrote out a lot of the drop first. I went after the drop first. We'll talk about that in a second. So for the beginning, I played it, and I was getting my notes down, and I was like, nah. And I must have gone through like 15 different sounds trying to figure out what I wanted. And I came across this click sound that if I were to solo and turn on these guys, not that one, this one, this guy. And that was a really interesting sound. I was digging through my clicks, and you'll notice that I have granulizers like all over the map. Granulizer. That's how I do the vocal effect, is a granulizer. More granulizer. So granulizers are cool because they can look at individual sample points, and so they're really, really nifty like that. So I decided to use that, and I automated the grain spacing, wave spacing, and grain hold time. And when you combine them in interesting ways, you get interesting results. So in this case, I got this cool thing, and I did a pitch bend near the end, which is something that's kind of cool. You have pitch bend accessibility when you put it in a granulizer. So I got this, and it sort of comes up. And then I was like, okay. So that's pretty cool, because immediately, as soon as you throw sub down, like crazy sounding sort of weird morphing type sub, which there's no better way to do it than to just simply throw a sample in there and pitch the snot of it down, if that's even a phrase, and then you filter out the top end, and now you have this crazy morphing sub floor. So that's what this was, but this was a click, so it's even better because now it has a tail. And what I do is I put it on loop, so it continues to loop and it reaches the end, and then I have all this extra space, so that gets down there, but there's some high frequency content, so it still has some high end, and it has this one click, so that's kind of cool. I was like, oh, I like this click thing. It's a little weird. And then I came over here, and I was still fiddling with pads, and this time I was using Harmor. There's a lot of harmony sampling going on in this track, and there's also, I even broke out battery. Like, I never break out battery, and I broke out battery. So it's just weird. I was looking all over the place for samples that I was like, dang it, this isn't what I need. This isn't what I want. I could try and process my own, but I wanted to stay away from getting way into the sound design. It was mostly the snare I was having issues with. I must have like 5 snares in this track. But anyways, I found this cool bell pad thing amongst my huge collection of samples. And oh, you can't hear it because all these filters and stuff are on. And so it's right here. Its job in life is to create just a low atmosphere. I use it at one point for a riser over here somewhere. Let me see if I can find it. right here, it sort of comes up. It's a little more aggressive than it was before. But if I come over here and play it for you. And so I have some unison going on and some harmony sampling. So that was another thing. This is a fabulous way to get cool results. I messed for a long time with time and speed settings on other samples and found that I was not getting results I was totally sold on. So I didn't go for that. But over here on 30, I have another one. And now this one sounds like this. I forgot where I got this. It's some sort of, I think it was a gong sound of some kind. And of course, now I messed with time and speed quite a bit and things. And this is just a frequency. So this is sort of like white noise, but it's like lo-fi white noise. So I kind of dig that too. So together they form this like nice texture. Then I was like, okay. So then you have the basic stuff. Like here's a little like a blip thing. And I reversed it and then I guess I not reversed it and put them back to back. And I know, just creating atmosphere. This thing over here, there's this like sort of funky element right here where it's like this, it's a drill of some kind. I have this sample pack thing I bought from Black Octopus Sounds called SOAR. I forgot what this stands for. Transformer pack, I think. And they have really cool transformery sounds, but I don't use them all that often because they're really more cinematic. Oh my gosh. And yeah, anyways, what it is, I dropped that in a granulizer, and originally was some sort of a drill sound, and then I did a whole bunch of filtery jazz. The filter I use is actually in the filter section of the sampler in the granulizer, so I don't have to break out extra filters, and they have the filters I want. They use the fast low pass here, so I use that along with the granulization functions. So you see, that's pretty cool. And then I just little ting that sort of adds to it, little anvil ting. And that is that. It looks kind of wimpy when it's that small, but it's even called Blip, which to me is sort of a childish name. But whatever. It doesn't really matter. I name stuff Blip all the time. Okay, so enough with the blipping. The other thing is I got a didgeridoo sample that I found in my machine pack, and I was like, what the heck? I had didgeridoo, because I've messed with didgeridoo samples. Those things are pretty dope. So what I did was I took the volume down, and I also dropped it in a granulizer. I just granulized the snot out of the beginning, and I messed with, again, the 3 settings. These ones don't move as much. I believe I only automate the filter. Once I had the didgeridoo set, I didn't mess with it any further, so you can hear it doing its thing. And what I do is it's sort of like this down below, and then it gets louder and louder and louder and louder. And then I'm like, oh, I'm just going to freaking just stop it right where it's at. So I did that. That to me was like really cool. I was like, all right, I got a cool intro thing. This is very atmospheric. And then I was thinking of more things I could do, but this was like enough. I was like, all right, this is it. Like, sounds crazy. I'm going to add one more thing in here, probably. It's going to be my name. It's going to say composing gloves. It's going to be like somewhere in here, very artistic like, but I haven't put it in there yet. I do it in some other older tracks. I don't think I ever published them. They are a Harmer to resample it. It's like not crazy. Go watch my Harmer from the ground up if you want to know about that. So then I have this sample I found. It's called The Fat Man. And it's just a guy saying this.
Nothing's more important to the fat man than eating.
And so I was like, oh, perfect. Because I already knew. I like deliberately knew that I wanted the track to be called The Fat Man. I was thinking about putting a sample that said something along the lines of dance, fat man, dance. And I may still do that. I'm going to go around, maybe ask some friends to say some stuff for me. If you're looking for like, how do you get cool samples that like aren't your voice every single time? And not like that I do that, because I normally end up doing most of the stuff myself. But if you ever want to, it's really fun to just go around and tell your friends to say stuff, and then they'll say random crap that you can use in tracks. So it's really a really fun idea. Now, this first bass hit, I'm considering making longer because it kind of gets a little too rhythmic too quickly for the atmosphere. So this part I may change. This is something, though, that is really tough to sort of tell because I've listened to it so many times. I'd need some more fresh listens. Maybe you guys drop your opinion down in the comment like, oh, I think this. I think most of you guys would agree, though, because on the couple fresh listens that I have had between like breaks and stuff, I've been like, ooh, that comes in a little quick. So I'm considering changing this. And then it seems to be fighting with the sub, but I have a sub drop here to give it extra hit. Over the monitors, that was something. So I don't anticipate people listening to this over their headphones or that much. I expect like full big systems. So I might not necessarily cater to headphones, because fitting this much sound into like these little drivers that are pumping it straight into your ears, everything's going to sound cramped. You won't feel it. This is a sound that you're going to feel. It's going to like make you shake. So I may just leave sub in there, but this is a sub drop. And yeah, it's got some stuff. It matches the bass and whatever. So I got that going. And this was originally a shaker, a hi-hat shaker. It was one of those, and I knew I needed some sort of those. Have you ever heard of like Glitch Mob? I hope you have. They're really cool. You should check them out. And what they do is they have that. And personally, I think some guy went up to the mic and just went into the mic. My stomach's kind of bothering me right now. I didn't really eat that much. Maybe that's what it is. But anyways, what it is I took it, I time stretched it using just the stretching algorithm inside the playlist. And then I got 2 of them and I pitched them around. I believe there's only 2 versions. And so there's these 2 different pitches that go so give a variation. And this thing comes from the sample library, again, of the cinematic library. I forgot if so this was like some sort of a cymbal hit or something, and I put a ton of reverb on it, recorded it, and then reversed it, because I knew I wanted that sort of whoop, you know, that kind of a thing. That's probably the best acapella you'll ever hear on the subject. What is this? Oh, this is more of my atmosphere stuff. So I put that in there, merge some stuff together, make it sound kind of cool. But I believe my filters are off, so there's no reason it's there. But I'm going to leave it there just in case it's doing something I forgot about. But I don't think it is. Now, okay, so we get to... Okay, so drums and bass are sort of like... I'm going to go with basses first. You guys probably care about the basses a bit more than the drums. And the drums don't sound super fantastic right now because they are being crushed by the basses. Which in this track, I may have a bit more drum crushing. Because now... I don't know, because it's really important that they sort of pop out too, because those moments of silence are really going to punch. So it's going to be an interesting deal of shifting attention from bass to drums. But the bass design is actually not super crazy. It's one of the tools that I sort of left alone. I have several instances of Reactor open, and I'm using just presets I found on... what is this? Not Polyplex. Razor. It's right in front of me. It says it right there. So I used Razor and I used Massive, and I'm not sure if I used Harmor for any of... I don't think I actually used it for any bass. I started this track actually twice, and I was doing a lot of Harmor resampling and bass and stuff, and then I was like, no, I'm not about this life right now. And I hardly ever use presets. So I went through and I'm like, let me see what I can do with presets, since it's been so long since I've deliberately gone out and tried to use presets for something like this. And I found a lot of cool things. Actually. I was like, dang, this is like kind of dope. There's like, for example, the preset pack, Massive Threat is pretty awesome. Like, I'm not gonna lie, because like these are sounds I would be making anyways, and I'm like, they're already done. And then, but they're not like done. Like what I found is I get them, and then I'm like, oh man, this has so much potential for this thing. So I'll take these basses, and my first try was I simply grabbed a bunch of sounds that I thought were cool before doing any post, because I knew as soon as I did post to one, I would have to do post to all the others to make them up to par with my previous sound. And so I was like, you know, I'm going to keep it all just kind of low key right now, mess with it later. So I found this cool Reactor resound, or Razor resound or whatever. It's called Fractals. You may find it. And this several massive sounds. Now, these two are complements. You notice I sort of looked for complements. So these two complement each other, and then that's one, and here's its complement. And this one's another Razor, because I hardly ever go into these things anymore. So I'm trying to get like bigger scope of stuff that I go into, because I know what all the tools do and stuff. I just simply don't use the engine that often. And then, oh, this is another deal. That's for something else. Razor has some really cool capabilities. But what I did was I just drew out a big line, and I stick mostly to C. For those of you who watched my recent music theory video, I've recently came to the realization, it's not really a profound one, that most drum and bass is pedal point. So that's kind of an interesting deal. they stick around to one note, or they're not, it's not pedal point, but a lot of stuff. Pedal point's a very common compositional tool. Go check it out if you're interested. So anyways, bass design. So I have this thing going on, and then, so I wrote this line out, right? So let's go back to the original line. I want to show you my creative process. So I wrote out this line. It sounds like this. Whoops, I gotta deselect stuff. I deleted that. So I wrote that out and I'm like, oh, cool. Now, of course, the sound sounded way wimpier before. What I did is most of these, now, okay, this one's a little involved. So we're gonna talk about that one in a second. So once you have a cool sound, like a cool bass to work from, all you really got to do is embellish it with your cool distortion plugins and tools and get creative. And so there's really only a couple major ways to do this. So you have your dynamic processing and your delayed processing, but I break them up a little bit further than that because they're both pretty broad categories. There's like in your delays, you have your spatial delays like reverb, and then you have your timbral delays, which could still be considered reverb, but really, really fast, short delay time reverb. So I mean short decay time. So your decay time's outrageously short. I use actually both. I use delay and reverb. I'll show you that in just a sec. But then the other one is just distortion. So I just have distortion, just beefs it up for you, and it's cool because of the way it does it. So if you're curious about that, go watch my tutorial on the Fruity Wave Shaper if you want to know about distortion. But you could use other wave shapers. I have nothing against other ones. Like I probably could have pulled out the X for 8-bit. It's a free one. Cover it in my free VST series because that would just be a cool variation. Stay away from the same. But in this way, I like the Fruity Wave Shaper like a lot. It's very rarely has not been satisfactory. Okay, so, and usually if it's not satisfactory, it's my fault because I'm doing weird crap. So let's talk about this first sound. So I'm only going to cover one of these sounds, and then the rest. Now the other one, they're all presets. So you people who are hardcore, make it yourself. You might not like that, but I can do that. I've done it. So I was kind of enjoying myself doing this because it's like stuff I didn't make. So having the options down here and knowing what everything does is kind of refreshing. So yeah, so I came through here. I'm using Ghoul in Massive. If you guys are looking in Byte, what are the other ones? Reactors, Warble, Lloyd, and I messed with some stuff in here. I can't remember what I messed with. I believe it was just the speed. That was it. I like simple stuff. And then this other stuff is like whatever. So once I have that, now let's talk about this first sound. So this first sound is this guy. I'm going to go over, so he's strewn throughout right here. So let's go to where he's sort of featured a little bit more. So right here, he is very featured, but it's very fast. So maybe we'll come back to where it's a bit slower. So here, he's a bit slower. No, that's still fast. If we come over here. Okay, so over here, okay, this is a cool spot to show you because over here, I introduce all three elements and it creates a really smooth merge into the ending. And so as I introduce the three elements I use to manipulate this bass, it becomes more dynamic. If you're looking for ways that like Infected Mushroom does this stuff, these are some pretty common techniques that are used by like almost every producer who makes like electro house or whatever. They generally know these techniques, or they've mastered like one or two and they really know some nice ways to use them. So here I've got my original sound, right? And here I'm just using a filter, so nothing crazy here, just a filter. And that's one of the basic ways I like to do things is I create rhythmic stuff. So I'm running this through a distortion quite heavily. The limiter is off because I decided to sidechain it and then it didn't work out. So this bass is going to be a weird one to mix. I boosted the high end. Oh yeah, there's a low pass in here. So here's the fast low pass. And so this is creating rhythmic texture. Now, this sound is so aggressive and big, and you should keep note of where it lands in my signal chain. It lands before my delay. So even though my filter's going do, 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 there's going to be delay bleeding over it. Listen. If I were to move this down, so that's pretty darn clean, but I didn't want that because I wanted a variation. So I'll show you how I use this dynamically in a second. So it's a fruity low pass, no resonance. It's basically a really fast volume control with a very specific volume control. It's a low pass filter. And then, of course, the boost. And now there is a delay. Now this delay time is actually, so okay. You could put a delay on stuff. Without a delay, this is what it sounds like. So it sounds still pretty dope. But if you do that over and over and over, it's going to get boring and stagnant. And I wanted to get some more mileage out of this bass. So I put a delay on it. And so it sounds like all metallic and, and it's crazy. So I was like, okay, that's really great. And then what you do is you can set the cutoff. It's all controlled by basically the volume of your feedback and where you put your cutoff. So if you're having frequency issues, you may break out a fancier delay plugin and do this. Now, reverb is essentially just really complicated delays. So you could do the same thing with a reverb, which I do somewhere in here. Oh, I do it on a snare because I was going for a more metallic texture. You'll get very metally type sound things from stuff like this. Anyways, I put it on a snare to give it more. If you ever use convolution on snares, you'll discover the same thing. You can get really metal like sounds from it. So, okay, now the delay, it's going in, and then I'm automating the time right here as we go. So you'll see that's one of the tools. Okay, so tool number, so it's like a combination of these tools combined dynamically. So tool number 1 is the low pass. Tool number 2 is this delay. Now, if you can't see it because it's really, really small automation, but it is increasing ever so slightly, and just the tiniest movement changes everything because you're shifting summing signals. So they sum differently and give you a completely new texture. So you need to move it like barely anything. Like if it moves period, you're going to get a difference, like a big one. And over here, I do quite a dramatic one. So you may want to zoom up your automation for doing stuff that's this small, or you may consider setting limits on your max, which I was messing with, but I wasn't having it. So I just zoomed stuff up. Okay, so we go from there to there. Now there's one other thing I do, because you might be saying, well, it's still all blurry and muddy and stuff, and it sounds pretty clean in other spots, which is something that I wanted. That is controlled by this, the delay to mix level. So I just simply turn it on and off. And when it's off, the low pass will have full command over its sharpness. And so this will be really sharp versus this one will not be really sharp. It'll be all blurry, which is kind of what I was going for, especially since this is a transitionary time. So as I play it, so you see there, I introduced the delay. So this is no delay quite yet. It has the delay set from earlier in the track. But now this one is a dynamically changing delay. So as the filter comes up and on and off, you hear it change, like it's changing every time. So you can definitely, I told you, this looks like nothing's there, but it's making an enormous difference. Nothing's more. Sorry, I got all that other stuff going on. Let me turn it off. It's hard to hear because it's supposed to be just a big blurry mess. Okay, so if I play this, I'm gonna start it right here and then listen for when this turns off. And you like right here, for example, this is a moment where I use it as a rhythmic deal. So it's kind of this interesting, you hear that wah at the end, it's like whatever. It gets, I liked it. It matches the mood here. Other times you may not want things a lot sharper. So over here, I have things moving around and then I mess with, it's a very similar automation. I believe it might even be the exact same automation. But yeah, so that's the bass design. Like I messed with those concepts. That's what I messed with. And then the rest was just sort of like getting the mixes right and the levels to sort of even out. So after that, now let's talk a little bit about the drums. So you understand the atmospheric elements now. At least I've explained some of the methods behind them. The voice guy is simply just a usage of the granulization and really getting creative. And I spent quite a while tweaking it to get it to do what I want, especially this part. You got to get the settings just right to get him to talk normal and then go like crazy.
Well, nothing's more important to the fat man.
Because if you ended the sample, I was having issues with getting it to restart again, even though it was on loop mode. I was like, dang it, curse this setting thing. So I was sitting here figuring out exactly what settings needed to be where. But anyways, so drums. Now, my drums are pretty beefy. They just haven't been mixed very good. Now I have like so many snares. It's kind of gross how many snares I have. But one thing you'll notice in a lot of, and especially in his track, the track I was basing it on, Extinction, had like different snares. You could definitely hear there were two separate snares. There was one that was sort of metal like, and then one that sort of punched. And so throughout here, I probably have like different combinations of snares coming together because I spent quite a while trying to find good snares. I found this one. I was like, okay, there's my body. And this one had sort of a ring sound to it. So I was like, oh, okay, I want that ring sound. I was convinced I was going to use it more. That one's like the buff boom one. So I may consider bringing this one up to get the ring, more metal out of it. But I brought out Polyplex. Now I used to use this. I use this all the time actually when I'm making sample packs. It's a fabulous way to make sample packs. You drop your own samples in and make some really cool stuff. In this case, I am using it for that side, the really bright side. So it's like, oh, okay. See, snare DnB, like it's just a preset. Like if you haven't looked in here, if you own this and you haven't, you should really look at it. It's a really cool tool for drums. Usually I like to bounce stuff out, but it does add natural variation. Like you can naturally variate stuff using various methods. I didn't really take advantage of the full power of what's available there. I took advantage of what I wanted. And okay, so there are some more things. So there are some other big hits here that I'm using Damage to actually get a hold of. There were a couple times where I bounce stuff out of Damage and then mangle it more with tools available in FL that I couldn't get to without messing up everything else I was doing in here. So it's just this one's tricky because it's so lo-fi and stuff, and there are ways of manipulating samples and things, but a lot of this stuff is just raw sample data. So I had to sort of choose carefully what I wanted to use. But moments like this have the drums. So boom, boom. And I was like, I know Damage is a friggin' sweet library. So I went over there and looked at that. So this combined with all this like mumbo jumbo, and then you have to like sort of figure out your rhythm, which is a whole nother thing. We have like the one, and then I tried to sort of have this big open second area at times. See right there. See, I love stuff like that. It's just like, boom, like I like airy drops too. Like they're so cool. There's this one I was searching forums once upon a time, and I found this one track that was so freaking cool. It sounded like this, and I didn't know anything about production really at the time. I think I had barely just. I was recently introduced to FL, and man, it was so cool. I can't ever find that track. Like I just can't find it. But it was so like, dang. Now I'm making stuff like it sort of. So I was really, yeah, man, I always remember that. You know that when you find that one song that sort of inspires you to move forward, and then you can't find it again, it really sucks. But it really motivates you to sort of try and recreate something similar. Okay, so that's going. Let me just play through, see if anything. I have these cymbal crashes come in. I try to get a little more complex, a little more drummy, but still create space. You'll hear the different snares come in. And there's also over here in the fast section. Well, let's talk about this section over here. So there's these which are really, really cool. Now there are these bump, 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 bump. Those are borrowed time. If you don't know what borrowed time is, MIDI music theory, it'll tell you all about it. Very useful for creating rhythms here, and combined with that wobble effect, very, very nice effect. Let's see, is there anything else that I really feel like, I grabbed a hi-hat loop and I chopped it up, and I paid a lot of attention to where my drums were landing. Over here, I accidentally moved an entire line over, and I really like the offset drum effect at the fast tempo. So I kept it. So if you listen for it, you'll notice that I try to line the drums up with whatever the basses are doing, but over here, they're like all like syncopated and weird. And so, yeah. So here's that.
Fat man. Easy.
So So anyways, yeah, that was an interesting deal. I really like how that sort of played out. It's so fast that I can get away with it. Now, I was experimenting. If you're wondering why I was turning this on off, this is just layered sub. I'm determining whether or not it's helping anything. I probably will take it out at the end of the day. So the drums are syncopated here. Very fast rhythm. Is there anything else really? More bass. So yeah, just combining those ideas. I mean, that's really the main ideas. After that, it's fine tuning and just knowing your tools and controlling them, and like where you want to put the low pass, creating the rhythms that you want. The rhythms can be so tricky. Like, it can take forever, mostly because you have to go on this enormous hunt for the sounds you want to use, and you're either going to make them or you're going to find them. Those are your two options. They're never right there for you. Otherwise, you just found them all conveniently in one spot. So I would argue that's just finding them all in one spot. So yeah, so that's why tracks like this can sometimes be quite difficult to compose if you don't have a library that you know really well. Stuff like this can become very difficult. You get big creative blocks. Yes, if you have any questions, let me know. What do you think of the track? Yeah, just let me know. Subscribe and have a blessed day.